What's up, you guys? ASMR Prodigy back again with another video. And if you didn't watch my last video, I stated in there that I was going to be starting a new series due to the fact that it's October, which is spooky season. We're going to be doing some spooky stories here in ASMR form, of course. So right now I think I'm only going to do these two stories I have on Reddit because one's super long and I'm not the biggest fan of reading. So yeah, without further ado, let's get our spook on. Make sure to leave a like, leave a comment, blah blah blah, all that good stuff. And if you're new here, stick around, subscribe, because we make pretty much any type of content over here in ASMR form, of course. Okay, so this first story is called Wildwood. It peered at me through the forest, the thick backwoods searching me as I walked along the old road, cracked and crumbling, replaced by the main roads. It was gently used at this point. I took the same walk every day. It was a compulsion. Nothing changed here, ever. The forest was alive. It had eyes that were like poison. Once I stopped, stock still, staring forward as a panicked girl ran straight into the wildwood. Her sideways glance, the way her hands moved, and her body shook. I knew she never re-emerged again. Something had chased her in there, and so the woods would finish the job. Now her eyes were amongst the collection that stared back at me through the overgrowth. I remember when it all started, when this daily trip began, that I used to walk in the middle of the road and shoot frantic glances towards the trees, afraid of the nightmare thicket. These days, I inch closer and closer, sometimes extending my fingers and running my hands just outside their reach. It shivers and spreads, but I always pull back in time. It's darker by the trees, and I don't just mean the inevitable shadows, more sinister than that. One day, I know that I'll go in. I'll set my affairs in order and head out for a walk. The televisions will light up dark rooms with my picture. Am I missing? Was it suicide? An abduction? An abduction, that's it. A seduction of sorts. It lured me with the whispers, the breeze that was always cool, the grass that was soft and never trodden, the overgrowth that didn't cut or bruise, a frigid sigh and an eerie glance. I'll go in there, and I won't come out again. It will be my eyes that watch you trod the uneven path. I get this sort of like eerie, creepy vibe from woods, from wilderness. Growing up, my whole life I've lived in the woods, and I've explored woods because, you know, as a kid, that's what you do. You go out and outside and play and do stuff. But I've always gotten this, like, whenever I'm in the woods alone, especially, I feel like something's watching me. And I know that sounds cliche or whatever, but if you think about it, it really is the truth, because I'm sure there's not thousands, but a lot of animals that are just watching you, and you don't know, like squirrels. Squirrels could be all the way at the top of the tree and watching you. So I feel like when you feel like you are being watched, you actually are being watched. And I mean, hopefully it's not like some big animal that could hurt you that's watching in the woods. But yeah, I definitely get creepy vibes from the from the woods. So that was our first story. Like I said, it's gonna be short, but the second one I have here is quite the lengthy story. It's called The Painting in My Grandma's House. So I'm gonna take a drink of my water. let's get started. I've always loved my grandma. Of course, that's an obvious thing. Most people love their grandparents, but I've always felt a connection to my grandma. She and I are like the same person, just born 2 generations apart. We think the same, we enjoy the same foods, and we even look similar. Well, we would if we were the same age anyway. My whole life we got along, and I really looked up to her. So it's not a surprise that when her health started to decline in the last years of her life, it was me who took the responsibility of caring for her. My parents were never around much, and she basically raised me, so she was like my mother as far as I was concerned. She lived by herself for as long as I've been alive. Her husband died before I was born, and she never talked about him much, only ever mentioning him if it was a part of a story she was telling, or if she was talking about something that had belonged to him. Since she was always alone and I never wanted to be at home, I spent most of my childhood living at her house. It wasn't a large place, but plenty of room for 2 people to live, especially since one was a child. Walking through it now, I see how small it really was. The front door is open into the living room, and it's connected to the kitchen and the dining room, though there's a hallway with 4 doors. The first door on the right is the bathroom. The second on the left is my old bedroom, now a storage room of sorts. The third, also on the left, is her bedroom, which is much larger than mine and has its own bathroom inside. And then the last door on the right is another room. I never really knew what the purpose of this room was. It wasn't forbidden or anything like that. I could go in if I pleased, but something felt wrong in there, like it wasn't supposed to be there. There were boxes of my grandpa's old stuff, a filing cabinet with old tax papers and legal stuff, a bed frame propped up against the wall but no bed, and a painting that hung on the wall. Still to this day, I am both appalled and deeply entranced by this painting. It's very large, probably 4 feet high and 2 feet in width. It hangs on the back wall right in the center of the room. There is nothing else on the wall nor anything leaning against it. It's a painting of a woman. She looks sort of like me and therefore sort of like my grandma as well. She's wearing a classic Victorian dress that's white with faded pink embroidered flowers. She's very pretty. Of course she is. She looks like me, LOL. Her skin is soft, a soft white shade, pale but not sickly. Her eyes are chartreuse and narrowed ever so slightly. She's not wearing any jewelry, but she does have a Victorian style hat on her formal updo hair curling from up beneath it. The painted woman sits staring directly ahead. Her legs aren't in the frame and the background is wispy, cloudy, kind of backdrop that reminds me of a background of yearbook pictures. Her eyes seem to follow you no matter where you are in the room. It always feels like she's about to turn her head and look directly at you. For this reason, I mostly stayed out of the room growing up. Mostly. When I was around 11 or 12, I started getting curious. You know how kids are at that age. I started looking through drawers, digging around in closets, and opening up boxes of my grandpa's old stuff. There really wasn't a reason. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. I was just curious and wanted to see if there was anything to find. Due to this new habit of mine, I spent much more time in the room at the end of the hall. My grandma didn't really like me going through my grandpa's old stuff very much. Like I said, she was private about him and his belongings. She never explicitly told me I couldn't look through it though, but always warned me about breaking anything and told me I better clean up the room if I take out the boxes. I respected her wishes. After my investigation sessions, I would meticulously put everything back where it went and stack the boxes neatly before closing the door. After a while, I realized there wasn't much to find. No big family mystery or hidden treasure, nothing like that. I remember one day looking at the boxes and knowing that sadly there was nothing left to dig through. The only mystery that remained was the painting. I asked my grandma and all she said was it was her heirloom and not to mess with. She said it was with a stern tone and I knew she would be upset if I ripped it or messed up the frame. From that day desk so I could leave the room. Over the next few months, strange things happened. When I was at the house alone, or when I was up later at night with my grandma, or after my grandma fell asleep, it felt like someone else was watching me. The familiar tension in the room would engulf the rest of the house. I started staying in my room if I was alone in the house, and locking the door whenever it was time to go to bed. I would get a rush of dread every time I turned to go down the hallway towards my bedroom. My eyes stayed locked on the door at the end of the hallway, always closed, but always giving off this impression that it was ready to burst open. The built-up anxiety was causing me to lose sleep. I started staying up very late and noticing noises I had never heard before. The house seemed to make all kinds of noises at night. There would be sounds of doors opening and closing, footsteps, chairs sliding and creaking, and sometimes I could swear someone was standing right outside my door. If I closed my eyes and focused, I could feel their presence staring at me through the wooden barrier. One night, after a bad dream, I was awake very late at night, unable to fall back asleep. I remember hearing the door at the end of the hall open. The door squeaked as it does when opened all the way. The carpeted hallway muffled thuds that approached my door. I wondered if it was my grandma coming to wake me up for some reason. I waited for the footsteps that stopped at my door. No one knocked or called for me. I listened hard and heard scratching on the carpet. I must have been feeling brave that night because I got up and walked to the door. I bent down and looked through the gap at the bottom. For the briefest moment, I saw those chartreuse eyes looking back at me. There was a swift flash of white fabric and muffled footsteps followed by a door closing softly. I had jumped back and was breathing heavily. I didn't know what to do. Being a kid, I thought I would get in trouble for being up this late, so I didn't want to go tell my grandma. I decided just to go back to bed, fall asleep, and forget it ever happened. In the morning, I told myself that it was a dream, part of a nightmare that had awoken me, or actually not awoken me. Shortly after the incident, there was a gap where I lived with my dad for a while and didn't return to my grandma's house for several months. I was so ready to come back after living with my father for a short while that I kind of wiped the fear from my mind. When I finally got to come live with her again, I was elated with joy. The first weeks were just like old times. We got along as well as ever, and I didn't really think about the room with the painting. Of course, this didn't last. Slowly but surely, the atmospheric dread seeped back and I started hearing noises again. This time, though, it was worse. It hadn't just been at night. It seemed like every time I was alone in the house, things started to happen. If I was in the den, I would hear noises down the hall. Footsteps, scratching, doors opening and closing, that sort of stuff. If I was in my room, it felt like something wanted me to stay there. A presence would stand outside my door, and I would be too terrified to open it. I never mentioned any of this to my grandma. I didn't want to hurt our relationship or make her think I wanted to leave. Even this torture was better than staying with either of my parents. Soon, I decided I had to do something. I couldn't let this thing control my life. I had to confront it. One day I was alone in the house, and the familiar odd things began to happen once again. The sound of the doors opening, creaking footsteps, but I wasn't going to let myself be terrorized all day. I was in the den and heard noises coming from the hallway. I took a few moments to steady myself before getting up and rushing to the kitchen. My footsteps landed hard as I moved fast as I could through the house. I didn't know what my plan was, but I wanted to show it I wasn't afraid. Bolting into the kitchen, I let out a yell. It was intended to be an intimidating kind of, got you kind of noise, but it came out as more of a squeal. I saw something crouched, peering at me from the hallway in a white blur as soon as I had let out my yell. Footsteps moving down the hallway let me know the thing was retreating back to the room with the painting. I started running again, determined to see what it was. I rounded the corner in the hallway and in a second saw the back legs of a human-looking creature scuttling down the hallway towards the back room. It bounded into the room, and after a moment, the top of its head emerged, and those chartreuse-colored eyes locked with mine as I stared back at it. After seeing was so happy to see her. I hugged her for a minute straight. After that encounter, I never heard noises again at night. The air still palpable, close to the door to the room with the painting in it. I never went inside. Nothing ever came out. Now, I'm here 30 years later. My grandma had passed, and it's my responsibility to see of her affairs. I am in the room with the painting, and its head is turned to look directly at me. I am frozen with fear, unable to reach out and remove the frame from the wall. Okay. That was creepy. That's interesting, to say the least. That just freaks me out, because when I hear that, I just picture my grandma's old house. That's a very similar layout to what the author described, and yeah, that's crazy. I'm kind of creeped out. I'm not even gonna lie to you. It's raining pretty hard where I am, and it's kind of windy out. So, yeah, I think I'm gonna do one more short one for you guys and make this a 3-story episode. I didn't pre-look over this one though, so this could be totally terrible and not entertaining. But this one is called "Ghost in the Picture," keeping on this the same path of things and paintings are pictures. Let's go. Bored, I searched through the storage on my phone to see what I could delete. I removed all those sad attempts at artistic landscapes, my face turning red with embarrassment. There were a series of pictures I took with a suspicious person in a black hoodie, changed out of what looked like hospital pajama bottoms and into a pair of shorts. I assumed he stole from the neighboring thrift store. He hid the bottoms under a recycling bin. My apartment is on the 5th floor and overlooks an alley that separates the apartment block I live in from the thrift store. I just happened to look out my window while working from home and saw the person behaving very strangely. He was twitchy and erratic. I moved onto the video files expecting to find nothing. I don't usually take videos with my phone. There were 3 videos. Very strange. I clicked the first video and saw a black screen with the audio what sounded like a commercial. Delete. I clicked on the next file, and again a black screen, but the audio was of an extremely muffled conversation that ended with a menacing chuckle. The last video was a 3-second video of a dark figure crawling through a window. Where the hell were these videos coming from? I deleted all the videos and decided to monitor my storage. A few days later, I checked my phone, and there were 3 videos. All of them were uploaded the day after I cleared my storage at 12:01 a.m. The first video was an audio of someone coughing and wheezing. The second was an audio of a very hoarse voice saying, "I see you," followed by the chilling laugh I heard before. The last video was terrifying. It was a video of the same suspicious-looking person in a black hoodie taken from my apartment. It showed him doubled over and coughing, but then he slowly turned to look up at my camera and mouthed these words, "I see you," followed by him laughing. I never took this video. Most disturbing, I realized that I had seen the hooded stranger before, outside of the thrift shop. There is... Oh shit, I lost where it was. There is a notice board in one of the sections. It's dedicated to clients who have passed away. Rick, the person in the video, he passed away a couple months ago, long before I took the pictures of him in the alley or the recent videos. As I deleted the video, something moved behind me. It sounded like clothes dropping on the floor. Turning to look, a black figure quickly moved behind the kitchen island, causing me to scream, "Who's there?" I waited. Nothing moved. I slowly walked around the edge of the island, expecting someone to jump out at me. Nothing was there. I took a closer look behind the island and noticed a piece of bright blue cloth stuffed into a cubby hole in the island. I pulled out a bright blue pair of hospital pajama bottoms. Okay, that one is like, I don't know if I believe that one. I definitely believe the second one with the painting, but for checking this one